come in and it's going to be all psychedelics. There we go. We moved there. There we go. Owen,
brace yourself for psychedelia.
Owen, brace yourself for psychedelia. He's connecting at this precise second in time. Kira says, my boyfriend asks, have you heard the Paul McCartney tribute album called The Art of McCartney? Yeah.
Why are they tributing someone who's alive?
That's what we do these days. Owen, are you there? We can neither hear you.
I think so. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you. It's like that. We cannot see you. I don't know if you don't have to show us yourself if you don't want to. Here we go. Here we go.
Sorry.
Here we go. I got a feeling this is going to be one of those shows tonight. Owen, we cannot see you.
Hello.
And I think your internet is a... There he is!
Hi, Owen.
But Owen, I think the internet's a little bit crappy because it's very glitchy. Can you hear us?
Yes. I can hear you, yes.
There's a slight delay. Are you listening to us on Twitch or are you listening on Zoom?
I'm listening on Zoom.
Okay. What is that poster behind you? It looks like a naked man. It looks like Naked Attraction, like we've just been watching.
You've got Naked Attraction on the brain.
It's a Ken Loach film called Land and Freedom. I'm at my father's house.
Okay, you don't have to justify your location. Owen, it's so nice to meet you. We've been chatting on email. My name's Ian. This is Catherine.
Hi.
And before we start, we've been obsessed with clips. So Owen has written a great book, which I started reading. I'm up to 1973 and a half. And Owen has written a great book about George Harrison in the 1970s. And knowing that you were coming on, we kind of got a little bit obsessed with... I've got to change everything because we're doing this. We got a little bit obsessed.
Talking about Dark Horse.
With Dark Horse, right? And
Good
this
album.
this is the clip that we cannot stop watching. Here we go. Not this bit. This is an advert for a bank or something.
We don't like these clips.
We don't like these guys. No, this clip here. This bit is just. What I feel. That bit there. That to me. And for those who missed it, here it is again. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. George Harrison in 1974. Owen, it's nice to meet you. Why a book about George Harrison in the 1970s?
Well, because there's a lot about Paul and John, and I don't think there's enough about George. And as you've said, he's a very handsome, brooding man.
He is. The weird thing, because I mean, listen, I love the Beatles. Catherine loves the Beatles. Everyone loves the Beatles even more after Get Back.
Yeah.
And George came across in that as unhappy. I guess unhappy is the vibe.
You could tell there was stuff going on with him.
Yeah.
There was a weird vibe with a kind of a feeling of resentment, mostly towards Paul McCartney, quite obviously.
Yeah, and there's miserable, except when Lord Billy of Preston wanders
his
in.
face lit up.
And then he kind of comes out. The end of the Beatles and the beginning of George Harrison's solo career, the 70s, there's a lot going on there, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think he was a little fed up by the end of the Beatles. I think he was the one of the four of them who seemed unbothered by the breakup. And I think I think his one compromise was he was going to record All Things Must Pass even if he was still with the Beatles, but it was coming out anyway.
Yeah. He's gone. We can say something?
No, I was going to say, so what was the dynamic? What was it that was going on behind the scenes that led to him being such a sulky bugger in the end of Get Back?
I think he was just been to America and he was hanging out with Dylan and Robbie Robertson, and they respected his songwriting. And he came back to England, and John's not interested in his work, and Paul needs to do 10 of his songs before he does any George songs. And he probably thinks, well, if Dylan likes me, why can't you guys?
The 70s are weird, right? Because at the beginning of the 70s, it's George and Ringo are the big stars. They're the one having the hits, the multi-platinum triple album, you know, the wonderful Photograph and all of those wonderful Ringo stuff, Back Off Boogaloo, all those wonderful stuff. And John and Paul are the ones that are kind of, I mean, they have big albums as well, but they're kind of struggling to find their feet. But George was all ready to go. He had like 500 songs already written that the Beatles weren't interested
Do you think
in.
that's because he's already counting on himself at that point? Those two need each other in a way, whether they really need each other or they just feel like they need each other because they've kind of grown up together writing songs.
Yeah.
George is already not counting on anyone anymore. He's ready to do his own thing. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah. Well, Paul's been on record saying that his confidence was shot when the Beatles broke. I mean, in 1970, he went up to Scotland and spent a few months drinking before he got his act together, and Linda helped him. I think it's because George had all these great songs stockpiled that everyone said they're great, but George Martin or Paul McCartney or John Lennon simply weren't interested in them. And it took someone like Phil Spector to say, no, these songs are amazing. And John Leckie, who engineered the album, and all these people to say, these are great songs.
Bizarrely, I was having an email exchange with John Leckie's son-in-law before lockdown. I live in a place called near Prince's Risborough, and John Leckie's son-in-law runs the snooker club.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, we were emailing, and he said something about, I don't know if you know my father-in-law, John Leckie. I'm like, John Leckie? Well, I'm XTC's biggest fan. Of course I know John Leckie. And going into All Things Must Pass, this huge phenomenon. Everybody was in there. There's a young, like a teenage Phil Collins. There's Peter Frampton. There's Badfinger. There's John Leckie. There's all of these people. And I think it's interesting. He went from, playing second or third fiddle in the Beatles, actually it was lead guitar, but to going into this huge thing where everybody was, it was kind of like a party almost.
I agree. Well, I interviewed John Leckie in 2018 for We Are Cult. And he said that was what it was, that instead of having 4 Beatles, let's bring everybody in.
Yeah. It's weird as well. For a brief moment, George Harrison was the biggest rock and roll star in the world. And for a period, he could do no wrong. You cannot underestimate how huge All Things Must Pass is. Although, I'm going to say it, I've never listened to Disc 3. I've never listened to the Jam. I have no interest in it whatsoever at all. But from that to the concert for Bangladesh, excuse me, that's my friend, these were huge things that kind of were the biggest things in rock for two or 3 years.
Oh yeah. I would go as far as Living in the Material World in 1973. I mean, he had a huge hit with Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. I think where it comes toppling down is 74 with Dark Horse, where his marriage ends. His best mate has walked off with his wife. He's got a cocaine problem. He's drinking too much. His vocals are shot, and he's lost confidence in himself. From a commercial point of view, anyway.
You're the first person I've heard say about his, publicly, who's researched the Beatles, to talk about him doing cocaine, because I don't think I think it's nodded at in that Living in the Material World documentary, and it's obvious as an ex-cocaine addict. It's obvious the gauntness, the raspy voice, he's a skeleton. But so is that, we know that, do we, that he was abusing cocaine?
Yes. Yes, yes. Patty Boyd, his ex-wife, has said that she said that around 73, 74, there was a change in personality, and she thought it was about the cocaine. I think I put it in the book.
I haven't got that far yet. I'm loving it. I started reading it today, and you're right. Everybody knows Paul McCartney in the 70s. Oh, it was Wings. Everyone knows John Lennon. Oh, he did Imagine, then he baked bread for 5 years. Everyone knows that story, however accurate they may or may not be. But there's after Bangladesh and Living in the Material World, it was a big hit. I didn't realise it. I think it got to 1 in the States and 2 over here, or maybe the other way around. But no one remembers that record.
Yeah, it's a shame, because it's a very, very mature album for a guy who was only 30. I mean, the lyrics are phenomenal, very far-reaching, but I think it's very sparse. It's quite uncompromising. So I think that's what it had going against it. It doesn't have the lushness of All Things Must Pass.
And then after that, the rest of the album. To be honest, do you know what? I hadn't listened to the George Harrison albums after that until lockdown. Actually, I got a box set, and I thought I would steam through these. And they all have some really, really good stuff on. I'm a big fan of Gon Troppo, the song and the album. I love Gon Troppo. I think it's a great nonsense song. But it's almost like he gave up after a while.
I don't know if he gave up. He gave a brilliant quote in '75 where he just said, "I'm not doing it for fame. I just I want the art to." I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, "It's not about commercial success. It's if I'm happy with the art." And I think that was his goal. But he did come back in '87 with a smash hit album, Cloud 9, which I actually don't think is very good because it is so kind of 80s rock.
Cloud 9, it always amazes me. The Beatles worked with, I may say something controversial here, Owen. The Beatles worked with the greatest producer, certainly for their sound, George Martin. Wonderful, genius, without a doubt the fifth Beatle.
Yes.
And then they all went off and worked with what I would consider two of the worst producers, Phil Spector and Jeff Lynne. I don't dig. Be My Baby is great. But the stuff that Spector did, the rock and roll album, okay, it worked with All Things Must Pass, but Spector and Jeff Lynne, it just...
Did you recoil then, Owen? Is that what I saw?
He's about to hang up this call. Who am I talking to these idiots for?
What?
I think the rock and roll album is just it's overblown and it's great. I share your opinion. It's not a very good album, but I think many people think because it's the last John Lennon studio album before Double Fantasy, they put it on a higher pedestal. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think All Things Must Pass. I think the opera behind the songs helps with that opulence. But I in other elements, I don't think, even like John Lennon's How, I don't think it needed those vibrato strings or those. I think it's all there in John's song. Yeah. I mean, he could have just sung it on piano.
I'll never forget when I Got My Mind Set on You, which was like his comeback, shall we say. I think he got to number 2 in the UK. And I remember my mum saying, when was it? About 86 or something, I think. And my mum saying, 87, okay. And my mum saying, I hope he gets to number 1. He's had a lot of bad luck. And I never asked her what she meant by that. But she felt there was a real kind of sympathy for him.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he always struck me as a sort of person who marched to his own drum, really.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he didn't give a shit what my mum thought, but
but I didn't realise people felt sorry for him.
I know we're going slightly out of your decade, but that comeback was weird. The brilliant When We Was Fab and that incredible video. And if you've never seen the video for When We Was Fab, go and watch that. It's a masterpiece. Full of it's supposedly, well, it's not, but everyone thought that the guy dressed up as the walrus was Paul. And then he did that big huge hit, did the Travelling Wilburys, and then kind of just went, oh fuck it, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, no, that's I agree with that summation. He seemed to get bored of the Wilburys. I mean, even by the second album or the third album, it just, I don't think he contributed any songs to that album, whereas he's all over the first one. Yeah. I think that was something with George, that he was very hot and cold. He was either invested in a project or he didn't want to be in a project. And I think we can see it in Get Back that he just doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. I have to talk. This is the whole reason I got in touch with you. The 1974 Dark Horse Tour. It should have been the biggest rock and roll experience. It should have taken him to godlike status. He was close, but it should have taken him to godlike status. But it was a disaster, wasn't it?
Oh, complete disaster. I don't think George helped because he frequently berated the audience. He said to them that he at one interview he said he'd die for God but not for rock and roll. He criticized the audiences for not digging the material. And worst of all, he played In My Life and Something in a very, very different fashion to the records, which is an unforgivable sin. I mean, you just don't do that on a single tour. So it seems when I listen to it, I admire his bravado and his bravery for changing things up. He might be better off doing that in Europe, not in America, where I think in places like Paris and London they might have been up for a long sitar instrumental, which he did with Ravi Shankar, or a slightly bluesier version of What Is Life and Something, but in America, they just didn't dig it.
That's cocaine for you.
That
isn't it?
that is cocaine. That raspiness is bad treatment of your voice, and it is.
But also
coke.
the attitude of I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Don't you realise how brilliant it is?
But the set, because there's footage from, I don't know if it's Madison Square Garden, one of the concerts. There is some footage that professionally shot footage, and it looks amazing. You know, that's that clip that we played there. It looks amazing. You know, the whole setup is incredible. The stage looks fantastic. You got Billy Preston there, who's kind of saving the show.
Yeah.
But that video's never gonna get released, is it?
Probably not. There was talks of doing a live album, but that was binned at one point, probably for obvious reasons, that he's riding on such a high, and then he's got such a huge disaster. And the reviews were pretty savage.
Yeah.
I mean, especially he took great umbrage with he attacked them on the next album with this song. He personally names them out in his lyrics. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to see George Harrison live at the Royal Albert Hall.
Nice.
I would guess, was that 89, 90, 91 probably. He was doing a concert for the Natural Law Party. And two of my friends went. Do you want to come? Do you want to come see George Harrison at the Royal Albert? Nah, I'm not bothered. And what a fucking stupid mistake that was, you know. And there's videos of it floating around, and he's never, you know. I quite like that Live in Japan album, even though it's kind of workmanlike. He was not the greatest. He's not the most relaxed live performer. Although I guess in Bangladesh, there's, you know, when he's doing a handful of songs, there's some good stuff.
Well, yeah, but the pressure wasn't on him in Bangladesh because there were so many people. Ringo does a song, Bob Dylan does a few songs, Preston does a song, Clapton's doing most of the guitar work. So, I mean, he only had to do a few numbers.
Yeah.
I think it was, he did another thing with the 1974 tour was he'd never sung so much in his life because John and Paul did most of the heavy lifting as a live outfit. So that might also have contributed to his rocky vocals.
Where are we on Lennon at Bangladesh? Because he said he didn't want to fly in. He was in wherever he was. He didn't want to fly in. But then the other story is he insisted that Yoko perform, and George went, "Nah, not having that."
I think there's probably both. It may have been that Lennon made a cover story and tried to say, "Oh, I couldn't be bothered," or it might have just been Lennon's laziness, or it may have been the pressure of performing with three of the Beatles. There's a myriad of reasons, but it's well known that George didn't hold Yoko in the highest of regard, so there might be some truth to that. It's a shame because, I mean, her Plastic Ono Band album is probably better than her husband's.
But he was a miserable bastard, right? What was I? Oh, there is a George Harrison biography came out a couple of years ago. And by the way, if you've got that, get this as well. The two do not cross over. You know, too much. This is a great read, and we'll do all the links in a second, Owen. But in that book, he comes across as miserable, short-tempered, and miserable. Is that the vibe that you got when you were researching this?
But I think he said it himself that he's a man of extremes. So there was no he never seemed to be mellow. If he was happy, he was the happiest guy in the room, and if he was difficult, he was the most difficult guy in the room. So, there are some stories of him being grumpy and difficult, and there's that unforgivable quote he gave in '74 where he said, "Oh, Paul's a fine bass player, but he's a bit overpowering," which doesn't read very well. And but at the same time, this is a man who donates millions to charity. Yeah. He helps Monty Python out of a hole, and he finances Life of Brian, the most anyone's paid for a cinema ticket, as Eric Idle said. And he could be grumpy. He strikes me as another celebrity. I mean, a bit like Dylan Moran, who's very committed to his art. But he does make it quite clear if he doesn't want to be somewhere, he's got to make that quite clear.
I've shared a car with Dylan Moran, and we had done a gig together, and we were being driven back, and he'd brought a big giant pizza, and I thought, we're all going to get pizza. Oh no, he did not.
Dylan had a pizza.
That pizza did not get passed. not one slice was offered to anyone else in the car. For me, the biggest crime about George Harrison is the perm. The perm is what was. I'm not expecting you to have the answer, Owen. But
he
what was that?
He always made bold choices, didn't he? Wasn't it?
Superb.
And Mimi wouldn't let him in the house because of his pink shirt. So
Oh, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think he gave a toss what anyone
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, no, he as you say, he was fairly far-reaching and uncompromising in his views. I prefer the 1970 long flowing hair and the big bushy beard. I mean, he makes my hair and beard look paltry in comparison. And I think that's him at his most handsome and at his most dapper, ironically, even though it's meant to be the opposite of all that. But I guess he felt he couldn't look like that for the rest of his life, and so he tried some stuff out, and one of them was the regrettable perm.
And the teeth changes. I love that the documentary, the Living in the Material. Is that what it's called? I can't remember the film.
Yeah.
And there is one scene where he's got tombstones, and then the next scene his teeth are pristine, and he's obviously had a lovely little job there. Is there one thing, Owen, that when you were researching this book, you went, "Oh shit, I didn't know that." What was the biggest surprise for you?
That's a very good question. I think the biggest surprise for me was that he regularly he didn't seem quite as hard on the Beatles as I thought he was. I mean, he was frequently quite positive. I mean, as early as '76, he's watching clips of This Boy and he's enjoying it.
Yeah.
And he's by '79 he's saying that he loves Paul and he loves John, and he goes from, in '74 he seems to have no interest in the Beatles, and in '79 he seems to say, well, maybe we can get back together in the future, or he's a lot more positive about the music, which he wasn't in the early '70s, or at least he didn't project it. So that surprised me.
And I think that was the surprise for Beatles fans when he did When We Was Fab, which is a Beatles song, basically, and the Beatles are in the. It's a wonderful homage to the Beatles. He's fascinating. He's fascinating, and I love the fact as well that I don't know if it's in the 20 years ago today, the Sgt. Pepper, or certainly in Anthology. He's asked about songs. So, what was it like playing on Taxman? Which album was that on again? He doesn't know the albums.
No, but don't you remember when we spoke to Patty? They were just living from deal to deal. They thought it was going to end tomorrow for a long time, didn't they?
Yeah, but not knowing the albums is...
It means more to us than it did to them. That's the shocker.
And that's it. He lived it, and I guess some way... I've always said being a Beatle must have been traumatic. The insanity of it, the heat of that focus for 6, 7, 8 years. But it was weird he didn't know the albums, though. That's strange, right, Owen?
Well, yeah, I think John Lennon similarly wouldn't know which album was on which. And sometimes Paul has slipped up on albums. I guess by Sgt. Pepper, they're much more focused. This is the album for this year, but before that, they were releasing 2 or 3 albums a year. Like it's hard for them to know if a song is on Hard Day's Night or Save or Beatles for Sale. They were both at the same year.
I've had the great pleasure, Owen, of interviewing Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees several times, and he always starts off with saying, "I don't remember anything. So good luck with this," and you'll ask him about an episode or you'll ask him about a song. He goes, let me phone up Andrew Sandoval, because it was the '60s, man. There was
they were busy.
Have you seen that clip that's been doing the rounds of that Monkees biopic? It's been on Twitter the last week, and it's this wonderful but awful film about the Monkees made by Rhino. And it's actors playing them, and the scene that's been doing the round is the Monkees meeting the Beatles in a nightclub. Yeah. Oh man, Owen, if you've not seen it, I'll tweet it to you. It's absolutely, it's incredible.
It reminded me of a bad waxworks museum. You go, I think that's who that's supposed to be. Okay.
It's very good.
The accents are crazy as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Go on, Owen. Sorry.
I'd love to see it.
You're going to get sent that at some point this evening. And also, you reminded me, we have interviewed Pattie Boyd once, and we were told firsthand what that first LSD trip was like with the dentist.
I was thinking about that.
That was insane.
Those innocent moments where they didn't know what was going on, apparently, turned into that, to him obviously telling US audiences that they were dickheads for not understanding the greatness he was presenting to them. How did that happen?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, he was quite a haughty chap. Good old George.
Oh, and if there's one song from the 70s that you think has been lost, George Harrison's song that you know, everyone who thinks that My Sweet Lord and, you know, What Is Life and all that, what is the one song you would send people towards saying, you don't know this, but this is great?
It's on the Dark Horse album, actually, called "So Sad," and it's about his breakup with Patty, because it's such a raw song, and it's got this great melodic hook, and it's him basically howling at the end of his marriage, and it's as personal as anything you're going to get with John Lennon.
Owen, it's so lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. Do you know what? I don't want to put ideas in your head. We need a really good Ringo book. You know, we need a Mark Lewison 500-page book about Ringo.
Just don't expect him to sign any of them.
I met Ringo. I interviewed Ringo once. I interviewed him. It was the coolest thing. I'd been on This Morning that morning with Philip and Holly, and I was in Apple waiting to interview Ringo, and I was so nervous. And Ringo walked in and he pointed at me and went, I know you. I saw you on the telly this morning. And we did the interview, and I knew he wasn't, but I got out my copy of the Beatles double album. I said, Ringo, would you sign it? He went, come on, you know I'm not going to sign that. I said, I know, but I had to ask.
Did he at least give you a peace and love?
Yeah.
No,
he gave me a peace and love. But also, this was like 10 years before COVID. No handshakes, elbows. He was doing elbows before it was popular.
Oh, you see?
He invented
it. You see, he's leading the way.
He's leading. Oh, and where is right? So obviously, George Harrison in the 1970s is a decades book.
Yeah.
Obviously, Amazon. Is there a place where if they buy it from, you get more money?
Very good question. Yes, so Burning Shed is the main place. Burning Shed is a music website. I'm sure. Yes.
I love, but again, I'm a big fan of XTC and Partridge, so I'm at Burning Shed all the time.
Yeah.
Right,
well, having interviewed Partridge, I can tell you, like, the man can talk. He's an interview's dream.
He invited me to his house once. I ended up staying for 8 hours,
Yeah.
and I look back, think, oh my god, he must have hated me. We went out. Here's the thing: we went out for a curry. Him and his partner, and we went out for a curry. And as we were leaving, he said, "Oh shit, Terry Chambers is over there, who's one of XTC." Terry's over there. I don't want to fucking see him. Ian, could you sort of like? I had to walk in between Andy and Terry so that Terry wouldn't notice him in the curry house. It was nuts. Here we go. I have got the page. I'm going to post this link into the chat. Everybody.
Oh yeah.
It's a great picture.
I love one of those.
It's a great picture on the cover. Everybody, support. This is kind of fringy. Burning Shed is great. This is kind of a fringy book. If you buy things like this, there's more chance of other things like this getting written, and it's helpful, and it's great that we finally got something about this. I'm going to post the links on, what do they call it? They call it Twitter, don't they?
I believe some people call it that. Yeah.
We'll do that. The link's in the chat. And if you're listening to the podcast, George Harrison in the 1970s, go to burningshed.com. Type in George Harrison and it will pop up. If you have to get it from Amazon, do, as long as it gets bought. But this Burning Shed supports the artists in a much more direct way than bloody those thieves.
I'm going to get one for me and one for my dad.
It's thieves. How are you going to buy? You sold 2 copies, Owen.
Of course.
Well, I'm a poor salesman. I don't know how I did that.
Owen, it's lovely to see you. I wish you the very best of luck with it, and thank you for doing it. Oh, what a time for your internet broke then. Sorry, what was that? Your internet is gone, but it's probably the best. Oh, you've just sold another one. Dave's bought one as well. Oh, and the internet has died, which is the perfect time for us. So thank you.
I said thanks for having me on. I enjoyed your show, Steve.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming he could have told us to fuck off at the end there. We just don't.
That was his moment.
That was his moment. Owen, thank you very much, mate. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. There we go. That was a nice guy. Let me just do the tweets. Here we go. Great new book about George Harrison in the 1970s.